Hello and welcome to Hidden Existence. Hope everybody is doing all right out there tonight. We've got a great show tonight because we've got a great guest all the way from, well, London town, I guess, or somewhere around there. Andy McGrath, Beast of Britain. How are you doing?
I'm totally wiped, but I'm happy to be here. I'm so happy because you're like my satirical, sullen soulmate. I feel like we feel the same things. We dislike the same things, unlike the same things. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, well, I'm happy to have you here.
Yeah,
It's you were going to be on a couple of weeks ago, but you
it
had
was.
to
I
cancel.
totally backed out, wimped out.
I know, chickened out.
I chickened out.
I wasn't surprised. But we had a good night anyway, so,
Yeah, without me.
you lost out.
You basically invited all my friends to my birthday and I didn't turn up.
That's what it was. That's exactly what it was. You would have loved it.
I would have. I was so tired, and it was wrong. I felt bad, but I'm glad I'm here now.
What's great about tonight is it's only 11 o'clock because our clocks haven't changed yet. And usually it's midnight for me when I'm going live, and 1 o'clock in the morning for Bigfoot Odyssey. But it's 11 o'clock, so I'm feeling quite awake.
Happy days to the end of the month.
Yeah, 2 days. So what are you doing at the moment? You're working on a new book.
I'm working on that same. I'm working on the same piece in North America. I've actually just sort of shelved publishing it because I want to go through the others, and I've considered putting them all together, and I just started expanding the research. I've been working on a really giant research doc for about 3-4 weeks, in between working at that crazy vaccination center, and just really getting into research again and all the different cryptids around the world. And that's the thing that excites me. I remember that really makes me very happy because there's such, outside of Bigfoot and Nessie and all that stuff, there's such a massive cryptid pantheon to choose from. And great stuff. And I'm loving it, really loving it. And so I'm back in the zone. My wife hates it, but I'm back in the zone.
I think once you're in it, you've got to stay in it, haven't you? And go with the momentum.
I'm in the mood, so I'm just 6-7 hours a day. I'm just writing at the moment.
That's a lot. So you were going to expand your book as well, weren't you? I know you were going to just do the North American.
Well, there was in segments. There was Beast of Britain, and there was Beast of North America, Beast of South America, and so on and so forth of the continents. And I thought to myself, why not just write them all the continents, into one huge book and sort of split it up Lord of the Rings style into segments, like one huge one that you just, you can't fit in the shelf. And that can also be sold as separate little ones between 200 and 300 pages that for quick reads that they fucking get into. I mean, clearly I don't have any sense, so I'm trying to do something that's insane, and but it's fun, and whatever happens, if I just end up releasing them one by one and I've written them, or it comes into one big thing, it'll still be fun. It'll still be great.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's good, isn't it, to step away sometimes and just have a break, absolutely. and then look who we've got. We've got Captain Daz.
Captain Daz.
Daz. Daz, don't we?
He's the person I aspire to be in personality, in outlook, saintly person. If I could only be a quarter as nice as Captain Daz, I could. I mean, genuinely nice.
He is. He's a great guy. Hi, Sandra. Just saying hello to Sandra Piper. What have you been working on that's interesting? You mentioned the little people. I don't know too much about that.
Well, the little people. I'm just going to bring my little research stock in front of me here. That they go by many names around the world, and they generally tend to be split up, not exclusively into two camps. One camp is something that would match a sort of a proto pygmy human, maybe something like duende or the orang cardal of Indonesia, something like that, or the Ebu Gogo would be a great example on Flores, which is almost like a diminutive ancient human, but a proto pygmy, a small one. And the others, to me, it's the first thing I was interested in when I started studying this, was more like a Littlefoot, something like the Janjadi or Nimbinji of Australia, and or the orang pendek, for example, in Indonesia again, which is more like a 1 meter, 1.5 meter tall primate, some kind of bipedal primate, like Bigfoot in many respects, but small. I think the book was of Vancouver Island would also qualify, or the Pukwudgie would qualify for that as well in some respects. And I just started looking into it, and it's I've been prepping a doc all week. It's really interesting, but then it's really difficult to pull apart these stories because most of them have fallen into a kind of local fairy folklore in most of the countries in which they originate. So, for instance, in Britain, something that would really match in many ways a sort of Littlefoot creature here would be something like a brownie, or puck, or something like that. Hobgoblin, there's something that's said to have interaction with human, but it's really mixed up with our folklore, and it's hard to pull out what they may have been. One of the theories I had about them was this folklore that is built up around them is that maybe they're a kind of supernatural supplement in a way, with many of our archaic cultures trying to naturally explain some of the things they were experiencing in their environment into supernatural spirits, and they would be maybe supplements for religious admonishment, or the threat of divine retribution for transgressing moral codes of the culture you belong to. So I looked at many relating legends belong to things like the wood woes that were purported the Carafe maidens, or the water horse, that would invite children to ride upon its back and then plunge them down into the depths of the freezing waters of the lochs. And when you look around the world, all human societies, they have this common theme. So in South America, you have the duende, which, in many ways is clearly being transplanted from the name, at least, from the Spanish colonialists, because you have it in Spain and Portugal too. But you have variants of this creature, which is kind of like a dwarf in a way, like a hairy dwarf, where it's almost like a gnome, like a tall pointed hat. It's about 2 feet to 4 feet again. Has this ugly kind of grizzled face, and they have in Belize, for instance, it translates into the Tata Duende, and they have this theory that if you disrespect the forest, that the Tata Duende will get you. They're used to punish people. Or in Vancouver Island, but the book was this small Littlefoot in a way, that whistles, and it's associated with drowning victims, or the spirit of drowning victims. And I look at that and I think, was this a way of trying to reconcile ourselves to things that happened to people we loved? Maybe a child drowned, or somebody drowned, and their misbehavior was translated into this creature that would come back and tempt children into the water to keep them safe. It's a warning, like a boogeyman type of thing. So lots of tales, lots of stories.
It's interesting, isn't it, that when I think of the Pendle Witches and the story of the Pendle Witches, I don't know if you know much about it, but
No.
They thought they were, these 60, I think there was 18 of them, that they were witches basically, and they were putting curses on people, and they didn't really help themselves at the time, because one of them said that she was walking through the woods and a dog came and spoke to her. Now, well, a dog told me to do it. But one theory is back then, the food wasn't as refined as like the flour and things like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, the richer people had the better food, but there was the parasite. I think it's called ergot,
Yeah.
which can create hallucinations. And these women were going through all sorts of things, crazy, you know, like you might be on LSD or something. And you wonder if there have been in other places foods that have been eaten, roots, herbs, berries, whatever, that have created hallucinations and created some of these cryptids. Because you know that when I looked today about woodwose, and I thought, what is the connection to Bigfoot? And that actually there is no, for me, there's no connection.
It's
It
just really
doesn't.
the hairy appearance and the
That's
depictions,
it.
but that's as far as it goes.
Yeah, it was just
Mm.
a mythological
Mm.
creature used for nothing. And so, you know, wild man, green man, to me, that depicts the Father Earth or someone who looked after the woods. I don't know, you know, the nature side.
Yeah.
And it's how do we, you know, we are doing it, aren't we? We're taking one thing and creating something else with it because it's done over years or misinterpretation of what these cryptids are, or these names for things, or these beliefs, or tales, or folklore. We've kind of gone out of control, maybe a little bit. What is real? What isn't? And how many of these cryptids are actually just folklore? It's just a story
I think
and nothing more.
I think a lot of it is just folklore, and with a lot of them, well, there's some. So if you look at the Orang Pendek, you can actually find there's people like Adam Davis and Cliff Barrickman have gone and they've discovered footprints, they've cast them, they've tracked them, they've been on expeditions where people have had sightings. There's modern sightings of something like that, or the Janjadi or the regional name Nimbinji.
Mm.
There's real modern day sightings, but when you look at something like Bookwis or the Hulder folk or anything like that, really, this is something that's folkloric. Maybe it existed at one point or existed as a reality in the folklore, but if there were sightings, they've died away. They don't exist anymore in that sense. But
Also, well, Steve makes a good point. Curious cryptid. How about just a warning to keep young people closer to the village? It's a
I
bit.
think so.
In my head before, I was thinking wee Willy Winky. You know, go to bed, otherwise they'll be knocking at the window and scaring your kids to death.
Yeah.
Maybe some of these were just that, simply that.
No, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that even in my notes here, I was looking at the book was, for instance, and its association with drowning victims. I've written it's a cautionary cryptid tale association with drowning victims. It seems to curate the classic cautionary tale to keep kids away. Like Steve said, from the perils and pitfalls of the outside world, stay away from the water's edge, or the bookwis will drag you under, etc. But it also can be a way of dealing with mourning, like we discussed. You know, the tales of the animal are they representative of returning drowning victims? Are they presented in that way to cope with the untimely loss of a loved one through neglect or misadventure or whatever? And then you have things like the relation between, again, words like the duende in Spain and Portugal, and then in Central and South America, and also with Bukwas. I found, well, actually, some of the tribes have a name for it that's very similar to Pukwudgie, which is, that's from a completely different part of um, America. One of the terms for it from the Belakul and the Salishan is box or pucks. And I thought, well, that reminds me of puck or puka that we have here. That forest spirit, which is like the brownie. And then, you've got those things also in Iceland and Scandinavia and all of Western Europe. I thought, is that something, especially in Celtic countries as well, is that something we actually transported to that part of the Americas when we first colonized? And did they then take that legend on, or did they have similar legends and just adopted our word essentially to explain what it was that they believed, and then modified it over time? it's interesting to get into it, but there is no clear answer as to where the origination has come from. Something real or something cautionary, as Steve said.
That's the thing. There are no answers to any of these.
Yeah, no, there's clues.
There's lots of clues.
Yeah, there's clues.
And some that aren't clues, but they're as clues,
Yeah.
and we don't know, do we?
No.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And Hawaii is another place, isn't it? That's reportedly has these little people.
The Menahuna.
The Menahuna.
Or Menahune, I think they call them. Yeah. Very interesting. I mean, that one is, again, that's very interesting. What that could likely be with Hawaii actually is when the Tahitians, I think, arrived in 1100, somewhere around there. They basically supplanted the original population that were living there, and they had another word which I believe is manahune for low class or a low class or a lowly person. And these original inhabitants, apparently, they were sort of pushed out of the island into the surrounding lesser islands, and eventually possibly distinguished. And that all of the islands, they have all these very ancient bits of architecture and stoneworks and even huge fake ponds that have been built, gigantic fish ponds that the Tahitians don't claim. They say that the Menahune built these. Basically, they were on the island, they built them, but they described them as this little race of people. Whereas, a lot of people think, well, actually, perhaps we weren't actually looking at a little race of people here, but instead, the original inhabitants that have been transposed into these mythical creatures, through either guilt or the Chinese whisper phenomenon. These were the people that lived here in 1100. We pushed them out, and slowly but surely, they became these mythical people.
I'll just gonna say, Jean, hi Jean. They told fairy tales, but they told them to protect people. I find there's a lot of truth to all stories, and I believe that there's something in all these stories that has to be the truth somehow. Like you say, maybe some past experience of something. I don't know. It's interesting. Gary here, he's got a love show later on. Don't know what that's about, Gary, but that sounds interesting.
He has a love show, or I have a love show.
He's got a love show. I think he meant live show, but you never know. You never know. Tracy Bowers is going to Hawaii. Well, Tracy, go and have a look for those little
the island of
people.
I think it's called Kauai, the main island where they're supposed to live. I don't know how you pronounce it actually. If it's Kauai or Kauai, Kauai.
Right.
Oddly, actually, in 1820 on Kauai, when the last, I think it was one of the last kings of Kauai took a census of the island, 65 people were listed as Menahune. So either that was descendants of this original tribe or little tiny people, between 2 and 4 feet tall. So yeah, interested. I think that was under King Kamali.
Right.
Kamawali. I don't know how to pronounce the words in that language, but very interesting.
Close enough.
Yeah.
Fly by Stew says, what's the film called with the goblins and trolls? Spider's Wick. Do you know what is that what it's called?
What film?
Film with goblins and trolls. I'm not sure.
Spiderwick. Spiderwick Chronicles?
Spiderwick. Oh.
I've not seen that. The last one I remember of any note was the film Troll from the mid-80s, because I'm old.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
Because I'm old. I'll tell you a story about that really briefly, which is slightly off cryptids, but it does involve aliens. Before the lockdown, last summer I was in my local coffee shop, and during the whole summer it became completely populated by just old people sitting there all day long. You can never get a seat. I don't mind old people, but they were just nursing this coffee all day long. Couldn't sit down with my laptop, do any work. And I said to a girl I always talk to, over the counter, "Gosh, it's like a scene from Cocoon in here, right?" And she was like, "What's Cocoon?" I said, "Oh, that movie about the old people's home and the aliens store their eggs in the swimming pool and the old people get rejuvenated." She said, "I haven't seen that. When was that out?" And I was like, "Oh, sometime in the 80s." And she's like, "I was born in 1998.
Oh, dear.
I kind of
Oops.
slunk off into the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. I was doing something there I shouldn't.
What happened?
I was just trying to get something up, but I will
Yeah.
do it while we're chatting away. I just have to thank my new members that have joined my channel. Have joined the Bigfoot Odyssey. I was going to say it's the Hidden Existence family, and I'm all Bigfoot Odyssey. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Bummer, and Laura. Thank you so much for joining. I can see now you're wearing out the little emojis that you get. You get some little special emojis like Bigfoot and stuff like that. I'm going to add some new ones as well, because they're fun.
You got your own emojis?
Got my own little emojis that
Wow.
you'll see them if you go back and look at the chat. If you're really bored later,
Yeah,
you can go back
I
through
will. I will.
it. Let me just check. But George, you're right. We would have to be extremely narrow-minded to think that we were the only beings on Earth. I think so. There's got to be other stuff out there. Well, there is, isn't there? We know that. So, anything else that you were covering recently?
Yeah, I mean, wow. Well, that was one big thing. Now, something I've started to look at a little bit again is tales of different creatures around the world, especially, and there's one I've been having a great chat with, and this is something that I've been going through with my colleagues Scott Modis and Cara St. Laurent, which is the Zero Morrow monster cryptid carcass. Now, this is not my research. This is Scott's essentially, but it's really turned me back onto this this famous carcass. Now, this was something that, for those who don't know, was discovered by a Japanese fishing trawler in 1977, April 25th, that for all intents and purposes seemed to resemble a decomposing plesiosaur. It brought the thing, this 10-meter carcass, on board, and they measured it, they dropped it on the deck. The marine biologist on the ship, Michihiko Yano, he examined the creature and said, "This isn't a shark." And everybody on the ship thought this wasn't a shark. They had to chuck it overboard because it was going to spoil the whole catch. Classic story. And they did so. They took some samples from it, fibers from the flipper and some other bits, I think, took them back to Japan. And then there was this whole, massive media hype at the time about the Japanese have discovered a living or recently deceased prehistoric aquatic reptile, and lots of people got involved. It was later tested with the methods available at the time and determined to be very similar to shark DNA, especially in the case of its elastoidin, which is something you find in the flippers. So I've been having this little chat, these little series chats with Scott and Carrick, and he's come up with this fantastic research, which basically shows that it's very possible that one, fossil ichthyosaurs might show evidence of elastoidin fibers in their fossil remains, as well as other creatures such as turtles, other reptiles such as turtles and lizards may have them in their clothes. And we've been going through the whole thing, the anatomy of the creature. So, for instance, has a very, what appears to be defined pectoral which you wouldn't find in things like plesiosaurs or pliosaurs. But in other situations, the flippers are all four of them, very uniform in size, it would seem, and unusual for a shark. And some of the positions, as far as they can be viewed, of those pectoral fins do seem to be incorrect for it to be a basking shark. So we've just been taking down deep on that about 1 hour every week for the last 5 or 6 weeks. It's been really good fun. I just can't wait to get to the end of it.
Yeah, it's
Um,
fascinating.
yeah, really fascinating. And one of the fascinating things about it was the initial sketch made by the ship's marine biologist, Michele Guyano, does seem to show something that looks a bit like a plesiosaur. But there is some sort of dispute, essentially, that when the measurements that he actually wrote down for the sketch he made are actually redrawn, the torso appears to be very much longer, and there's various other uh, issues with the creature making it a plesiosaur. Most people concluded essentially, and it's still the um the pervading paradigm to this day, that it was a decomposing basking shark. And actually, if you look at the way they decompose, kind of makes sense. I used to be on the other team, but there are lots of elements to it that would really solidify that conclusion. However, what we want to do somehow is find the original fibers again, and subject them to one day, DNA um, techniques, DNA analysis, because I mean, you can actually detect these days. You could actually take a spoon of soup, of a shark fin soup, and detect what kind of shark was used in that soup by
Wow.
by that spoon. So I mean, if there are fibers left and if they're in good shape, I am trying to get in touch with the university if they pick up the phone. Um, then it would be great to get hold of them and test them and see if it is indeed a shark.
Mm.
So yeah, great. But again,
Exciting.
I'm
Well,
I'm like a freeloader on this. I'm hanging on to Scott's coat, me and Carrick, and we're just being dragged over this minefield of a wonderfully scientific and very balanced analysis of the case.
yeah, it's great you can actually get into one with enough evidence or enough
Hmm.
substance to actually follow it through.
Mhm.
Because unfortunately, we don't get to do that a lot, do we? Or
No, not
hardly
much.
ever.
Not much.
Thank you, Lindsay, for becoming a member of
Hi,
the Hidden
Lindsay.
Existence family. Um, it's. We're gonna talk a little bit about some other cryptids that maybe we haven't heard much about, and I've never heard of this.
Hmm.
The
Okay.
Gowari.
It's like a ground sloth in South America. Um, well,
Are
they
you-
think it might be a giant ground sloth. Some
Yeah,
people thought that it's a Sasquatch, but I
or
don't know a lot about that. But again uh, the folklore surrounding it gives it very strange anatomy.
yeah, a bulletproof covering of
Mm,
scales, they call it, on its back, thick red fur on its head, long curved claws. They're kind of describing it as more like an ape-like creature, but I guess I
mm.
know what you're saying about the sloth because I've heard about that as well.
Yeah,
Um, and interesting, it's got a second mouth in the center of its
the
stomach.
center of its stomach. Yeah,
I wonder
yeah.
what that was about,
It
or why they even thought that.
I cannot make head nor tail of that. It just a lot of these weird creatures. I think this one might have the feet on backwards as well. A lot of them, a lot of the little people have their feet on backwards.
And it can
Um,
produce the foul smell.
well,
Well,
that's a Sasquatchy sort of thing, isn't it? That
yeah,
we often hear about. So that's something. What I often think with this is if you ever look at old depictions of sea serpents, or even in fact, if you go into a bestiary, one of the old bestiaries from the 700-800s, and further on, and look at some of the depictions of known creatures like crocodiles and things that the author and the illustrator clearly never saw, but had it described to them. They're really, really random. This you think is that really a crocodile, or is that really an elephant, or whatever? It doesn't really match, and you can tell that a person has been given this description from somebody who maybe doesn't quite know what they're describing either. And they've drawn like a photo fit for it. And I think that's what things like the mapping Gowari are. This is it's shocked sort of encounters that some local has had with things, and maybe it's a local Indian or somebody else, and that's gone then back into Portuguese or Spanish, and then that's been translated in its description to somebody else who's drawn it up, and then that's become the folklore. That's what I think that mouth in the stomach is, or the because it's still purported to have these big clawed hands as well, which would really match really well with a ground sloth, a giant ground sloth, should they still exist.
Apparently, there was a sighting in 2007, but I need to look a bit further into that.
Yeah.
I know there was one reported, but I haven't actually looked at the details yet. But
yeah,
that'd be interesting to know.
It's on my list. It's on my list. Carl Schuker wrote a really good bit about it in Still in Search of Prehistoric Survivors, which is a great book for anybody out there looking for something that's superbly well written and all-encompassing for cryptid research. He's such a reliable, and he is a zoologist as well. And I think he's got over 30 odd books on various zoological subjects, and I've got it, and I've referenced it a few times. But yeah, as to the sighting, don't know.
No. Jean wants to know, where do you stand on mermaid tails?
Yeah,
tails or tails.
You'd have to stand on them at the end, wouldn't you? Where they are.
Well, you would.
Yeah, that's where the mermaid tails there at the end. I don't know. I think it's a mistaken identity thing. I definitely don't think you're thinking or looking at something that is, part human, part fish.
It's got to be a tail from a sailor or something seen.
Yeah,
more than likely. And who knows, back then there could be, anything. You can imagine all sorts, can't you, being out at sea?
Manatees, dugongs, and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I don't know. Even sailors, as they're not particularly choosy, but a manatee and a dugong, regardless of how desperate you are to get to shore, look like a manatee and a dugong, don't they? So I'm not sure if that's and other Serenians. I'm not sure if that's the explanation really. There's the theory of aquatic primates, which seems really to me. I think Lauren Coleman wrote about it in his Bigfoot and Other Mystery Apes of the World with Heeg. I got it up there somewhere. Anyway, I haven't really delved into it because it's always been something I've shied away from, primarily thinking it's probably not a real creature, so how can I investigate it? Not to say it couldn't be. Just because what did you say before? We're here researching Bigfoot and Dogman and all this other stuff, and then somebody says aliens or mermaids. We're like, ooh, it's a bit dodgy. And what are we talking about? We're already on, thin ice ourselves. So I wouldn't exclude it.
No. And apparently Hog Farmer, we're boring as hell and he's out. So
Hog Farmer? It's got to be better in hog farming, surely.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so, but what were the other ones that we were talking about that I found that you'd never heard of before?
The Ahul.
The
giant bat.
The Ahul, yeah. I'd never heard of that. Ahul.
Yeah, very. I mean, I've only heard a little bit about it. That it's a giant bat. Some people say it's a flying primate. I'm guessing maybe it has a sort of a more of a man-like appearance if it's very, very large. I mean, if you look at it, if you ever see a giant fox close up, they're huge. A flying fox, I mean, they're huge. And fruit bat. I don't know. I don't know about that one. I think it's hard. I think it's generally hard to judge the size of flying creatures and their wingspan, even when you see a bird that you're familiar with. I said, no, this is not like this is Java, isn't it? Sorry,
Java, Indonesia.
Java, yeah.
It was about 10 feet. The wingspan.
10 feet. Okay, that's pretty huge.
That's pretty big, isn't it?
Yeah, that's pretty huge.
quite big.
Oh, I've
Who
got it again
knows?
now.
Who knows?
Some even say 18 to 28 feet. Okay. Would you look? It could be people see things all the time. I know one very, very reliable witness who wouldn't lie, who saw a large bipedal in North America, man-like creature, sort of furred or feathered, body and wings, actually descend into the middle of the road when I was driving, and its wingspan covered the entire road. So, you know, people tell you really hard to believe things, but that's surely the point. The point is, it's a sighting of a very unusual creature. Otherwise, you wouldn't be telling us guys about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just out of interest, OPW asks, there was a story of a man from Wales who had a seriously bad encounter with a beast. Have you heard anything? I haven't. Do you know any more? Have you got any more details? OPW?
Is that a bird-like beast? Is that the Vulture Man of the Malvern Hills?
Could be. We'll find out.
Be the
We'll find
Vulture
out.
Man. That story I received third hand. If it's the Vulture Man of the Malvern Hills, and I think there were two couples hiking in the Malvern Hills when they saw a very large bird, very tall bird that looked like a vulture, that approached them in a very intimidating way. Apparently, one of the ladies fainted and was in a bit of a swoon, and they had to drag her back to the pub. It's Wales, of course. Where else would you drag anybody? Not the hospital. Drag him to the pub and revive her there. You know, with the however many shots it took. I don't know how many. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing the story now. Paraphrasing the story. We saw a big bird. Give me a drink. Give me another. Go on. One for the road. I'm feeling better. I don't know. Look, that could be something like a rhea. Maybe somebody had a pet cassowary. Or hopefully not. You know, they're really mean. But something like that, I think, would surprise somebody. Out of place. There was a rhea on the loose. Oh, it was in Derbyshire or somewhere in England for years and years on end. And people would just see it darting in out of the road. And if you didn't know that was around, that came upon you, you know, on a sort of a overcast and stormy day, you'd feel a bit perturbed by that for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Marge Soma saying maybe a Mothman. I don't think we've had Mothman reports in England, have we? Maybe in Wales, but
there was one that was there was one somewhere. There was one that was described as a Mothman. I'm sure of it not too long ago. I didn't catch up on it. There's the Owlman, of course, which you could say is very similar to a Mothman. The Owlman of Mornin. But again, the sources cause me concern. These sightings were collected by some of them by Tony Doc Shields. The famed Wizard of the West and traveling huckster. He had those. He's responsible for that Muppet photo of the Nessie, isn't he? Back in the 70s or 80s, and possibly responsible for the Morgar photo, the Mary F. And who knows if there's one of the lakes of Killarney as well that might have another photo that's come from him in some regard. So it's hard to pin that one down. Although I did have a friend who stayed in that area, and was very disturbed by hearing some sort of creature flapping overhead and hearing that same electric static kind of buzzing in the trees around some abandoned houses, and they had a terrible feeling got out there. So maybe there's something around there. Could be.
It's very curious, isn't it? It's just these things.
Yeah.
That I don't know.
If they're nocturnal, Kerry, as well. I mean, it's hard to. I mean, that's the theory with most of these things. They're super isolated or they're nocturnal. And the countryside, as you know, it's black after dark. There's no lighting. If you're a nocturnal creature, especially if you're airborne, then it's pretty much the town is yours. Nobody's going to know.
Yeah, Yeah, there's a lot goes on when the lights go down.
Ominous.
Oh, here's a fun fact from Wes. The name of who comes from its loud, distinct cry.
I knew. Hey, Wes, how you doing?
I'm not sure where I got this fun fact from, but you know, I couldn't find anything else out about it. I'm not even going to try and do it.
I don't see that, but that's.
Are you looking at?
That's a really cool fact.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
If it's true, that is. It must be.
Well, I mean, if any of it's true, it's I've just got cryptids wiki up actually, cryptids fandom, and
see if it's a true fact.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a fact. I think it's kidding.
No, I've heard something like that. I'm sure.
Have you? Oh, yeah. Right. Sorry, Wes.
That rings a bell. Definitely rings a bell. Les wouldn't lie to us.
No, I don't. Well, I think
Les wouldn't either.
Found that fact and thought he'd share it with us. But anyway, yeah, if you've got any facts about it, let us know.
Yeah, definitely.
The other interesting one, and I completely forgot how to pronounce it, but I'm gonna guess it's Doverchu. Doverchu.
Gary from Irish Aquatic Monsters told me it was Doaku.
Doaku. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, that's what he says, and he is Irish. So I'm going to take his word for it.
Yeah, and it doesn't even sound Irish. I mean, I don't even. When I saw it at first, I wouldn't have even.
Yeah.
Thought, but anyway, so that's like a waterhound, like an otter-like creature, animal.
King otter.
A king otter.
In Irish folklore, yeah.
Described as a half dog, half fish hybrid with a long snaking body. Now, what could that mean? Big eels?
No, I think you're talking about a really large otter, basically. Maybe something that's
half dog. I mean, that's.
They have a dog-like appearance, otters in some way. I mean, if you ever look at the what is the name of the Amazonian otter? When it's huge, it's 6 feet long. It's about 6 feet long, and really, if you saw that thing, you know, it's got a very dog-like face. Let me just see what the size of that is. So the giant otter. Actually, the giant otter, giant river otter, South American. Okay, 1.7 meters long. If you saw something that size swing about in an Irish lake, you know, you'd be really put out.
That's.
Or even even a sea lion, you know, an errant sea lion getting into some of those lakes, perhaps.
We are not used to seeing big things over here, are we?
No, not at all.
Creature-wise, in the sea, even, or you know, apart from cows and deer, we don't see sharks. We don't see whales. We don't see anything really like that.
Not often, and not for most of us as well. They're around. I mean, in the sea anyway, but you don't see them that often. Like I always had, you know, if I ever saw a badger in the forest, I'd get the hell out. We've got wild boar and everything now, but we don't have the same predatory setup as most nations.
No,
you know, even much of Europe has still got wolves and bears. Then you have those guys. You know, so it's yeah.
I don't know what Marge is laughing at now, but I must have said something funny. The other thing, I'm trying to find the interesting one. This one, the Melanchuca. Melanchuca.
I've got a little bit on that. Let me just bring it up.
Yeah.
Let me just bring that up for you. Where is it?
This is interesting because of the tusk, the horn, like the hippopotamus.
There's some very interesting carvings to that. Just give me a second. The document is so huge.
That translates apparently to elephant killer.
That's right. So it's large as an elephant, allegedly. Sometimes larger, reddish brown to grey in color, hairless. It's a single large, sharp, curved ivory horn on its nose, big mouth, short frilled neck or frilly ears, massive legs, heavy tail like a crocodile's, and has tracks like a rhinoceros. And it's found in the dense rainforest, Liberia, Bumba, and Ngoko rivers, Cameroon, Gabon, Lubumu, Kele, Weso, Fondu, Dongu, Nipena, Republic of Congo, and Ka, Zambia. It's this, some really good researchers have been out there looking for this thing, along with Mukele and Bembe and many other creatures in that area, like the Mbielo, if that one even exists. There's some great wood carvings by local tribes of that. There's been some, as far as sightings go, I mean, proper recorded sightings, there's been three-toed footprints found. There hasn't really been any sightings attributed to particular people. I think that's the difficulty. It's more something that's known from the natives. Some of the theories are semi-aquatic rhinoceros, similar to the Telesaurus from the Miocene river and lake sediments in North America. I think that's Lucien Blanco, or surviving ceratopsian dinosaur like Monoclonius. That's the one us crypto guys like a lot. It was proposed by Roy Mackle, which is kind of like a Triceratops with one horn essentially, or an Elasmotherium, which is elephant size. And that was something known as the Siberian rhino, I think. Has this one huge horn on its head, and it's kind of I think it's an ungulate, some kind, as well as the Cynotherium, which is very very similar. I think Kolschuka proposed that one. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of ideas of what it could be, but really, for all intents and purposes, it sounds like sort of like a dinosaur. I think that people are describing. There's this great, and I got this from Cole's book I mentioned earlier, actually. There's this great wood carving that the researcher Michel Ballot found in Cameroon in 2005. And it shows these curiously sort of frilled ears with this long tail on a sort of very hippo-looking creature and this big horn on the front of the head. Which is, that's great. That's, maybe you could say that's, people will often say that's a folkloric or a cultural representation of some sort of spiritual deity. But there's also a sketch of a similar creature attacking elephants that was done in the 80s and 90s in the Central African Republic by a guy called Jean-Claude Thibault. And there's no way, 15 years prior, there's no way these two guys could have had any contact with each other. And they have different, the creature exists in that part of the world as well, allegedly. They're not connected countries, especially not at that time. So it's, it's a bit of a smoking gun there. Clearly, the tail is very strong, or the descriptions are the corroborative.
The one I got says it has a reputation for being dangerously confrontational when disturbed. It has been known to turn on and kill creatures larger than itself.
Yeah. It doesn't like elephants, especially, by all accounts. And I think it disembowels them, apparently, with this giant horn. That's the folklore. And yeah, exactly. Sounds like a lovely creature.
Well, if you're gonna, what would be the point of having a horn if you can't do that?
Well, exactly. And elephants. Nobody likes elephants, right? I mean, let's face it.
Well, I don't know. Depends what.
What's he done now? What's he doing? He's slanging off elephants
on
a podcast.
They're holy creatures.
Yeah.
This another one. Quite a few from Africa, South Africa. The Slang.
Oh yeah.
Have you heard of this one?
I've heard of it, but you're mentioning to me this big snake, right? You're mentioning it to me today. Was the first time I've really considered it since the original introduction. It's
these were primordial creatures comprised of the head and front of an elephant and the back and tail of an enormous serpent.
Yeah.
Apparently, they were all destroyed, according to legend, and some survived and retreated to the deep caves of the Northern Cape province. If you can hear any sort of...
I can hear your dog a little bit.
She's trying to bury a little cocktail sausage I gave her before.
Is she?
I can hear her trying to still hide it in the rug.
Sounds like she's panicking.
It's funny noises when she does it. It's like really desperately. Got to hide it.
She's gonna find it. She's gonna find it.
Yeah. So yeah, so you didn't know about this?
Oh, yeah, I've heard of it, but it's one of those things that sounds like it sounds like very much like a local myth or legend that has some spiritual elements mixed into it. That's my interpretation anyway. There's definitely sort of no, as far as I know, from a cursory glance, there's no modern day sightings of it.
Can you stop it? Sorry, she's got her. Oh, I did that. We did that one. Oh, this one, yeah. This is an interesting one. In the Alps as well. The Tatsalvim. Or Verm. How are you pronouncing it?
Yeah, is it Verm or Worm?
Verm. Worm. Kind of thinking it's Germany, kind of Austrian kind of word, maybe.
Yeah.
It being in the Alps. Supposed to inhabit the most isolated regions of the Alps.
Yeah.
Between 2 and 5 feet in length, with broad cat-like head, wide gaping mouth. Their forelimbs are short and armed with long claws, but they have no hind legs, and instead their body taper into a long snake-like tail.
Yeah, yeah. So this is a very interesting creature. I think they circulated the stories in the late 18th century, and that was a guy called Hans Fuchs. He saw 2 of them in 1779, and said he was so frightened. The story goes he was so frightened by his encounter that he died of a heart attack, but not before being able to provide a deathbed confession to his family what he saw. I said the monsters, they were between 5 and 7 feet in length, with the bodies of snakes, clawed paws on their forelegs, and large feline heads with razor-sharp teeth. Another tale appears in 1828 of a peasant finding the corpse of one that had been half eaten by crows, and something about a photograph of a snake-like creature with clawed arms and large head that was donated to the Geneva Institute of Science in the early part of the 20th century. I don't know what that photograph is, by the way.
Okay.
And another one that stemmed from an encounter a Swiss photographer named Balkan had with the cryptid in an alpine forest. I think that was dismissed as a hoax, basically. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, even in the 90s, I think people were talking about it. There was allegedly a skeleton belonging to a Tatsalvim that was sent to the Geneva Institute of Science again with a sizable donation. Strange. Yeah, it's like I always send lots of money to museums when I'm giving them a gift for an unknown creature. That's one of the things I do. Just make sure that envelope's nice and full. There's also reports in Italy, I think, near the Swiss border.
Yeah, Italy, Switzerland, Germany, all that kind of area. So who knows? And like you said, the Chinese whispers things.
Again, maybe.
With some things, definitely. I think so. It's very easy to pass these things around, and the next thing you know, you've got a monster living in your village. And did someone swear, Colette? I missed that. I
was going to say that I've got a very interesting take on the Tatsalvim, actually. When I was in the US in 2018, there's a guy, and I wish I could remember his last name, but I'm sure he was the head of the American Fortune Society, and after the International Cryptozoology Museum, his name is James something. He was a lovely old chap, really old guy. We visited his house, and he had this whole, basically it was another museum in itself of all these collections and artifacts and different things about cryptozoology and the paranormal he collected, fortune things. And he told us about an alleged Tatsalvim experience he had as a boy in New Hampshire, where he was He was walking along a forest road. And he saw this creature, again about 5-6 feet long, jet black with a kind of a yellow stripe along the side and a large head, race past him and start digging frantically with his front claws into a railway siding, so the embankment,
Right.
desperately trying to get away from him. And he said he watched it for about a minute, the time it took him to the thing to get into the railway embankment. And he believed that was, you know, the American equivalent of a Tatsalvim.
Right.
Yeah, strange sighting.
Yeah. So interesting because, like I said, I was looking today. I thought, let's try and find some more unusual, less heard of, maybe, but they're not for me anyway. I didn't realize there were so many interesting cryptids or reports about.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested in the European ones as well because I never really hear a lot.
Yeah, there's not a lot
About
that
you.
comes out. I wonder if
Yeah.
it's a language barrier in the sense that it just doesn't make it into the English speaking circles.
Possibly, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. And maybe that's where the translation goes wrong in
Yeah.
a way.
Yeah.
You know, another one which you probably might like is Tessie.
Oh, I don't know much about
You heard
Tessie.
of Tessie?
Tahoe Tessie.
Yes.
Yeah, from Lake Otis. I I might even have a doc on it somewhere. I haven't looked at her at all, actually, because there's so many lake monsters in the United States. There really, yeah, there's just tons of them, and yeah, I'd love to. Do you know much about this?
A little bit, only that
Yeah,
the sightings date back to the 19th century.
yeah,
Usually described as a vast snake-like creature with a long neck and humped back.
yeah.
And it can swim so fast that it can even keep up with sailboats.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
strangely, according to local folklore, Tessie sightings are always more common in even-numbered years than odd. Have you ever looked up that?
For Loch Ness.
Yeah, or
No, the one thing I did with Loch Ness was with a friend is actually look at the rainfall. It's in my book actually. The rainfall on certain years, where there was heavier rainfall, there inevitably is less insects because it's harder for them to to reproduce and fly in the rain, and because there's less insects, there's less fish in the loch. And so the years that have heavier rainfall have less insects, have less fish in the loch, and have less Nessie sightings. Oddly, and I did an example of about 15 years. I think it was 2000 to 2015, something like that. Can't remember. And yeah, almost inevitably, where there were records with the fisheries, with the uh, for the weather, there were, and we also had the amount of catch that the fisheries had around that time of year as well. That's how we judged how many fish were in the loch. There were less Nessie sightings. And it was just a funny thing to think. Well, wow, so there are mitigating factors. Maybe there's something that takes place in the local farming community, or if they have fish farms there, every 2 years that affects the presence of Tahoe Tessie, whether she decides to turn up for a meal or not. Totally random, off point, but there's also another odd thing about Loch Ness, which is nearly all of the sightings that are not mid-loch of Nessie are near Inver villages, Inver meaning river mouth. And of course, what happens when fish come out of those rivers, especially when there's a salmon run into the deep waters, they're vulnerable. So it makes sense. Actually, Nessie's kind of hanging out near those rivers,
to
waiting
feed.
for a confused and dazed meal, moving to deep water.
Yeah, it's like prime feeding.
Yeah.
Like when you watch those bears, I'm not sure
Oh yeah.
where it is. Is it at Yellowstone?
I don't
And they're
know.
just sat on,
Yeah.
on top
It
of
looks
where,
awesome.
and they're just waiting for the fish to jump out. I mean, literally, it's like handing them on a
Yeah.
plate, isn't it?
Just jumping into their mouth sometimes. Yeah.
Oh yes, and Champ. Hi Tim.
Champ,
You know,
I visited Lake Champlain in again in 2018, the only time I was in the US for 4 or 5 days. I think I was in uh, Vermont, also in the New York side, Port Henry, and what's that place called? Alex will be cursing me out now for forgetting all the locations. Anyway, 14 miles wide at its widest, a couple of 100 feet deep, and 114, 117 miles long. Allegedly, I can't remember the length. When you're standing there, it looks like a sea. They call it Lake Champlain Sea. It looks like a sea. And for us going to Loch Ness, 25 miles, a mile and a half at its widest, that looks really big. But when you look at this place, you can imagine something living there. There's also so much wildlife around and marshes and things. I met one or two people that gave me their sightings. Two of them two guys who had a sighting while sitting in the car, kind of looking over a bay. And yeah, it just seems to be, I would say it seems almost more prolific than Nessie in very blatant, obvious sightings, not just, odd wakes or the Nessie cam picking up some two indistinguishable kayaks from a distance or something like that
for a
by
deer,
Mr. Owen,
something swimming.
of Fagan, as lovely as he is, well, I think we're on sighting 7 or 8 on that Nessie cam of his in the papers now. And yeah, the ones in Champlain seem to be a lot more durable for my money.
Well, that's what it is, isn't it? Nessie is so vague. The sightings. It's been the odd one, hasn't there? The odd photo, but it's really hard to tell, isn't it?
There's a lot of good footage and photos that's just gone. By the way, they're just gone. They were great. They're great photos. If you look at Roland Watson's Nessie blog, which is Loch Ness Mystery blog. I think that's on blogspot.com. Hundreds of blogs about this, and he's meticulous. I would advise everybody check him out. Absolutely, and you'll find all those photos, all those clips, or what happened to them, why they're not around anymore, and yeah, who we should blame. I don't know. I don't know if we should blame anybody. I just thought I'd just check that in for at the end.
Why not? If you've got any questions for Andy, stick them up in capital letters, please.
Yeah.
We did have one, I think, from Gary. How are you doing, Gary? Does Andy believe these stories are true? If not, investigated in doing so. Andy believes these stories are true. If not,
I think I wonder if Gary's meaning I do believe, actually, my first thing for all the witnesses, by the way, is I believe them. It's more a case with me is it plausible enough for me to be able to conduct an investigation? That's what I'm thinking of. It's not, do I believe this person, do I not believe them? It's like, is there enough to this for me to be able to do an investigation, basically? And that's kind of where I am. I believe lots of the Nessie ones, the Champ ones. I believe a lot of the Bigfoot ones. Some of the little people ones is in a special things like the orang pendek, I believe, or the Nimbinji Janjali. I believe these are just undiscovered primates. So I definitely believe those. I really struggle with the Dogman sightings, but I can't deny the fact that people I really respect have seen them and told me so. So that's just a matter for my own faith or whatever to deal with.
Tim mentioned Dogman sightings in the UK before. Are they Dogman or are they werewolf?
Well, it's what's the
kind of thing?
What's the differentiation? Some people make a differentiation between legs, that the legs almost look wolf-like on some of the werewolf type creatures, and the Dogman looks bipedal like a Sasquatch, but with a dog-like head. Again, in Lauren Cohen's book, there was, and other people have theorized about giant monkeys. So they're basically bipedal, monkey-like creatures with this baboon-like snout, pointy ears and tails, which could be mistaken for something like that. But I think that's just as much a stretch, really, as there being a bipedal wolf-like creature. I don't think I can really believe that any large wolf or dog with an abnormality or spinal injury could pull off bipedal walking long enough to fool anybody into thinking it was a werewolf. I have investigated the possibility of it being like a cultic or ritual thing. There were many old pagan rites, cannibalistic rites for power, in which um, the devotee became kind of like a wolf or believed themselves to be a wolf for a long period of time. Could it be something like that, perhaps? That's something that does make sense to me. I had a little. What is this here? I wrote a bit about it there. Okay, so is it like a supernatural manifestation of a satanic cult-like ritual activity, in which either a physical demonic manifestation is brought into being, or an individual undergoes a trance-like metamorphosis, wherein he or she believes that they've become a werewolf? And so part of the literary evidence would suggest that cult members mix human flesh into their ritual sacrifices to Zeus. This is historically. Both Pliny the Elder and Pausanias discuss the participation of the young athlete Demarcus in the Arcadian sacrifice of an adolescent boy. When Demarcus was compelled to taste the entrails of the young boy, he was transformed into a wolf for 9 years. So that's from a historical writing, and I wonder if some of it historically has at least been that people dressed as or believing themselves to be wolves. And outside of that, it's an unknown bipedal canid. And that's very difficult to swallow, but not impossible, I don't think.
I've said before that my dad's Sicilian, and as a kid going over there through the summer holidays, there used to be a guy who would see through the day who had a lot of hair. And there were stories my dad used to tell me in his family, they used to have to lock him in the house at night, chain him up, some sort of werewolf. I don't know if it was just some growth thing. Some people have it, don't they? Where it looked like he had it on his hands and
hypertrichosis or something like that.
Something like that, yeah. But they also used to say, certain people could put curses on you and they give you a headache. A lot of superstition as well.
Yeah.
With stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's hyper. Yeah, I believe definitely a lot of the old stuff was like that, and especially societies being the way they are now. We've got some Sicilian family, and it's still very much like that, actually, in many ways. And these old superstitions, you can imagine somebody with some poor, unfortunate condition being accused of being locked up, day and night, and the rest of it. And what's this hypertrichosis is a rare and curious condition that causes excessive hair growth anywhere in a person's body. Sometimes known as werewolf syndrome. There you go.
Right. Okay.
It's there in the description. It's I believe that could have happened at one point, but maybe we're talking about serial killers. Maybe we're talking about people who are possessed of an idea, religious, cult-like or other, that they were some sort of a creature and enacted these these terrible fantasies or whatever. It's possible.
But we also people's reactions, though, isn't it, as well? We fear things we don't understand.
Yeah.
Rather than find out what the problem is, we just put a label on it and then we've got to fear it or whatever. So, Max has emailed me one. Let me just check.
Okay.
I think it was, hang on, how am I going to do this? I'll do it this way. I have a feeling I saw it briefly on Puckwudgies. Oh, he's put a real... That's a long... that's definitely too long to ask in chat, Max. I don't know if I can put it in here. haven't got it all here, but it's put. Does Andy know of any phenomenon associated with the Put Witches? The woods that I do my winter bigfooting in is in the middle of the
Wampanoag. Yeah.
Avalanche. They claim that the Put Witches here. I found. Hang on, let me get the other little bit.
Yeah.
This is, large structures as well as tiny glyphs.
Mm.
Could the latter be by the pucks?
Yeah. It's strange actually that lots of other little sort of people are said to leave glyphs, but also glyphs in stone occasionally. So I think the Menahune is supposed to leave stone glyphs and other things around, as well as little structures. I don't know a lot about the Pukwudgie yet, but it does seem to just tie into lots of little people folklore. So 2 to 5 feet in height, grey faces, long hair, trollish kind of appearance. Some describe them having quills along their backs and having the ability to appear and disappear at will, which is, that's just little people classic. That's a classic little people description, which could just mean they're just good at keeping out of sight. That they can be invisible. The Hulda folk are described that way, for example, primarily, and that they can mesmerize you with a stare. There's supposed to inhabit really, really vast areas, the northeastern United States, Great Lakes region, southeastern Canada. They're trickster spirits, which again could be they steal food, they start fires, they accost travelers, or send them off course, even maybe attack and kill humans. Historically, by the way, for the person who's asking, I don't know of any particular attack that's been attributed to them where somebody's been killed, and they orchestrate acts of sabotage. This is interesting. Again, I wonder once again, have the Indian trickster legends, have they been mixed with the European trolls and pixies and hobgoblins that have all of the same attributes, by the way, exactly the same in appearance, in their behavior, their invisibility, their magical powers, and especially sabotaging things or tricking people or stealing food, starting fires. The Trouts of Orkney do a very similar thing, and people in Orkney still believe that they're there, by the way, the Orkney Islands. So there's a legend about the Pukwudgie that they were once peaceful and friendly, but then they became more malevolent or aggressive towards people over the centuries.
You can't blame him, really, can you? I mean,
No, I feel the same.
Yeah.
I feel the same.
I'll tell you, Dean, why I said that about dogmen maybe being werewolves in the UK is because I've never heard the term dogman until I started watching American and Canadian kind of reports. It was really werewolf kind of reports here. So I don't know when it was before someone mentioned dogman sightings in the UK. There was a point where it wasn't called dogman here. And I just wondered what the interpretation, maybe it was an interpretation thing, or what, because that, like I said, that term is not an old term here at all. So that's why I said it like that, not because I don't think people are not seeing what they're seeing. It's just literally.
There is some differentiation people make, by the way, and Danielle, I think it's around the is it some bipedal man-like creature, or is it a wolf on its hind legs in a way? But I believe that all our old werewolf legends, or many of them mostly, were a bipedal man-like creature with a wolf's head or wolf's appearance. In fact, the chapter in my book is called Dogman Rebranding the Werewolf. So
right, okay,
because essentially it's werewolf is embarrassing, but Dogman, well, maybe that's something
possible. I've got one here. Phil. Hi, Phil. In Portugal, the legends of Corilario.
Yeah.
That is basically a werewolf, but he's more of a damn soul. That tends to talk about being. Yeah, would have thought it'd be called like lupo or something like that. I think they call it a lupo in Italian or Sicilian. So it's interesting.
There's just so much with the werewolf thing wrapped up in folklore, history, and also, these distant memories of cult-like history, where this would have been part of some of the paganistic rituals, perhaps. At least the very old of the old gods that we used to have when sacrifice was still part of the cultures that we inhabited, for sure. And then maybe some of it's to do with the fear of wolves as well. These are all, I realize these are all get out of jail free cards to avoid saying, what if there's just something that is an unknown creature that's a wolf? But it also falls into the paranormal side of things as well. So people think it's a paranormal creature, primarily so. So it's kind of outside of cryptozoology in one way. And in another, I wonder to myself, could it be something we just haven't figured out yet that is a creature?
Tim, it's interesting you should ask that, because I was going to add that to the list that we were going to talk about tonight. I'm just going to bring it up, and it's the Allgäu car. Hi.
What?
Help.
What is it?
I'm going to write it down here. It's this. This is the one.
Allgäu Korkoi.
Now, it's a Mongolian death worm.
Oh, is that
Have you heard about this?
okay? Yeah, I have. A few people went in search of this. Were great British explorers again, Richard Freeman and Adam Davis, have both been looking for that. I think Richard Freeman came to the conclusion that if it had once existed, that it no longer did, and that it may have ceased to exist in recent times. Mongolia is a big place. I would just rather perhaps say that perhaps this is more of a rare creature that's in uninhabited areas now, if it does exist.
Yeah.
Is there anything in the fossil record that could match a gigantic worm-like creature? Maybe it's not a worm. Maybe it's a sort of a reptile or a limbless lizard of some kind. I don't know. It's on my list. It's on my big list of things to dive into that I haven't quite done so yet. But yeah, I think these are the funny things actually that I would love to go looking for and hope not to find, because it spits acid at you. And
yeah, I was gonna say, more acid, it sounds more like a snake, doesn't it? Or like that. And it has apparently toxic slime, and anyone that touches it or tries to stroke it,
you can't touch it either. Yeah,
will die.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But the general consensus is, once you're aware that the creature's there, you're kind of dead anyway. So, touch it. You're a goner. Anyhow, go for it. Pick it up.
Yeah. It's, not worth it. Not worth stroking it. And you shouldn't stroke things that don't belong to you. That's what I was.
Or without asking. Creatures have rights too. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All those little kids that try and stroke my dog and get bit, and I go, well,
yeah, no means no.
That don't belong to you. It doesn't happen often. She's only got 3 teeth left anyway.
Oh,
so
bless her.
I know. If they can get in between the gaps, they're all right, Well, look, we're coming up to the end. Well, we've gone over the hour.
Yeah.
Are you all right, Andy? Are you still? We'll go another couple of minutes to the.
Yeah, of course. I love it. I love talking about all this stuff. It's not as good as hog farming, that's for sure. But
hog farming is the thing to be doing.
Yeah, well, listen, I'm sure actually that's probably really fascinating. Once you get into it, you work out how to
hog farming. It's so interesting.
No, I don't mean that in a patronizing way. Like really, I really think it could be cool. I can't be a hog farmer. I'm married to a Jewish lady, so there's no way I can go and farm pigs at the same time.
No,
and come home
damn well.
get any hugs or kisses. So
No,
yeah,
forget that. Forget
yeah.
that then. And what of the Tasmanian tiger?
Ah, okay. So it's Tim
Necessarily
again.
cryptid or something that existed, definitely existed.
No, it definitely existed. It's the Tasmanian tiger. I think when did it become extinct? It was in the last century. I'm gonna quickly Google it so I don't mess up the date like I always do. Um, so there was recently going around the groups on Facebook. There was footage that somebody had claimed was of a Tasmanian tiger. This group that essentially they'd spend all their time researching and trying to capture footage of the Tasmanian tiger. And they seemed like a really great bunch as well. There were a lot of high hopes, but essentially it was so obscured by the brush and the foliage around it, and the pictures, that it could have just as easily been a house cat or a wombat or whatever. Really, it was just not. Or even what the tiny little kangaroos called, not wallabies, the other ones. I can't remember. It's like a really small, anyway, a really small sort of bush kangaroo. Yeah, it just wasn't conclusive. People really hope it's still alive, and in a land like Australia, I really can't imagine, how it wouldn't be possible. Of course, Tasmania is a different subject altogether, but there have been rumours for years before that, even that it was alive on the mainland. 1936, I think that was
Right.
that was when it became extinct, when the last specimen, which was in captivity, died. Yeah.
Right.
What is it? It's the. There's some new footage. There's always new footage. Normally it's a dingo with mange, bit beat up, or it's sort of a fox, sort of a ropey looking fox from a distance or something like that.
Mm,
I believe they're out there. I believe they're still out there. I know people have seen them, but we don't have the proof yet.
no. It's funny because I mean, we were in that chat the other day. I won't mention too much, but I said I'd just seen a recent documentary about big cats, and they
Yeah.
showed some footage of one, and the guy actually went there, and when you get the perspective of actually where it was in the field, it was just a little house cat. You need to go, don't you? It just reminded me of that, just something you said then about
Yeah.
so hard to tell perspective on things and what they are.
Well, especially with creatures that look like other creatures, or with cats, for instance. I mean, some in the countryside, especially some domestic cats, can be fairly stocky, and muscular looking. And black cat from a black cat from 50 yards, a black domestic cat from 50 yards might not look too different than a panther from 200 yards. Just as blurry and indistinct, and essentially a cat from a distance for all intents and purposes. And what are you going to do about that? I've questioned myself time and time again why these people don't get closer, and if I saw a big bloody cat in the field, would I get closer to get the money shot? I think I would do it. I think I would do it because I couldn't live with myself letting it go and not doing anything.
No,
But I would be bricking it a bit. They're not too pleased if you sneak up on them
no, I
in
don't think
general.
so. I
Yeah.
don't think so. I mean, you just don't know, do you?
No.
Yeah, big cats in England. I'm actually going to be doing something about big
Oh
cats
yeah.
on Hidden
Yeah.
Existence soon. So,
Oh,
uh,
those guys are great as well. Their documentary, the guys you're having on there, is
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's going to be so good. And thank you for that.
I quickly recap. I see that question there. Maybe they're escapees. So quickly recap for Tim. So Tim, we had something introduced in 1976, was the Dangerous Wild Animals Act, and it was because a lot of people were keeping very exotic pets, in their garages or on farms, and just letting them roam around, or walking lions down Carnaby Street and things like that in London. And there was no law; you could just have what you wanted. So in 1976, they brought in this Dangerous Wild Animals Act law, and they had very specific stipulations in it. one of the stipulations was that the enclosure for big cats, especially, they had to have room for them to run around, plus ventilation and drainage and all the rest. And you can imagine what kind of room you need for an animal like that to sort of pounce about. People couldn't afford it, and people let them go. And the most common pets they owned were pumas or cougars, whatever you want to call them, mountain lions, and melanistic leopards or jaguars. That was a very sort of popular trophy pet, and they were let go. And 45 years later, almost, we're seeing their descendants. It would seem wandering around the country, and Daniela knows the sightings are endless.
Yeah,
They weekly,
definitely.
monthly, never ending.
Cats, yeah. And
Mm.
yes, escapees from zoos and
Mm.
places like that. I mean, animals get out. They
They
have been
do.
reported to get out.
Yeah.
And even I believe I encountered something like a
Yes.
big cat. I'll never know. And if I was into this subject back then,
Mm.
I'd have gone back the next day because it was snowing, and I'd have gone and looked for prints, and I think I would have found something in that field. But yeah, there was a lot. There's a lot of big cat sightings. That's going to be fascinating. I'm really interested getting into that now. So that's going to be a great show when I get those guys on.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're going to have to come back, Andy. We're going to have
I'd
to
love to. I'd
go
love
through
to.
more of this stuff.
There's one thing I wanted to check in on the big cats. There's always something else, isn't there? But on the intentional release side of things, so there was that guy that from the Black Country, the eccentric Lou Foley. Remember, he kept a pride of lions in Cradley Heath, and
Oh yeah.
his close friend of his, later claimed after that act came in, he unleashed lots of the cats on Malvern Hills, and he also released cats like safely into the British countryside for other pet owners who couldn't afford to keep them anymore, because nobody would take them. The zoos wouldn't take them. There was nobody around to pick them up and say, "Oh yeah, just send your big cats here."
I
You
mean,
either you had to put down, or
no,
you paid
release
the money.
wild. I
Yeah.
mean, it's dangerous, isn't it?
Mm.
I mean, we're so lucky. There's been very few accounts of attacks, hasn't there? I mean,
Yeah.
there have
Very
been
few.
some, but it's when you think about it, the
Yeah.
reality of letting a wild cat out just into the wild over here, especially in England,
Yeah. Yeah.
just
Well,
yeah.
let's say there were. I don't even know how to make a guess. Let's just pretend that there were 200. Let's say they've got about 20-mile radius per cat or something. 200 in the country. That's a lot of big cats. For people who don't know that they're there. And I do worry about it a lot, actually, because we're not aware as a population that there could be these big predators out there. But then, you know, what is it? 38 million rabbits estimated in the country, 30 million sheep, um,
There's a lot.
millions of deer. I mean, there's wild boar now. There's so much, and all of the game birds and the rest of it, the other small rodents and other things. I don't think even an injured cat could get a rabbit. Wouldn't really need to come to people. But you don't know. Who knows what the future holds?
Wrong place, wrong time, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
That's all it takes, isn't it? So
Animals have personalities just like people, and
yeah,
some of them aren't very nice.
that's it. Not all people have personalities, though, do they?
Yeah, well, at least animals do, right?
They
All of them
definitely.
have
Yeah,
personalities.
yeah. I think we all love our animals more than
We're
people.
so mean. It's a good thing that we're not our true selves on this podcast, actually, because in our little chats, we're not really mean. We
We're
bitch a
just
lot.
frustrated sometimes, aren't we?
We just
Things.
call each other up.
Yeah. Um, Look, it's been good.
Yeah,
Uh,
awesome.
we've had fun. It's been an hour and a half.
Hmm.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank
We
you.
will arrange to do this all again. Um, I've enjoyed it.
Me
Um,
too.
Thank you to everyone in the chat. Thank to everyone who asked a question and contributed tonight. Check out Andy's YouTube, Beast of Britain. I'm going to put that link. The link's already in the description. I'm just going to put it in the chat now for everyone.
There's a book.
And his book. Well, I'll give you the link as well to his Facebook
Thank you very much.
page. If you go over to Facebook, you'll be able to
it's all there.
Find him over there. And Andy does some great podcasts with some really interesting guests. People that you'll know, everybody in the chat will know. Go and check them out. They're called Beastly Theories.
Beastly Theories, yeah.
And I love them. And they're all up there on YouTube. So
it's on all the podcast forums as well. Spotify, Amazon, it's on all of the various forums.
Okay, great. All right, guys. So have a good night, everyone. I will be back here tomorrow night with Jason for Anything Goes. But until then,